Welcome to this week's Rider Support.
This week, we're going to be talking about how you know when you've done a little bit too much and overtraining starts to creep in. What are the most comfortable cycling shoes in the world? But first, we're going to start off talking about a performance advantage that you might be able to get from drinking beetroot juice. I know it sounds weird, but it is true.
Sounds gross too.
Sarah! Smart comment and we haven't even started.
Okay, let's jump straight in because I'm dying to hear about this magic juice. I've seen beetroot juice becoming really popular in health food shops, and I've even started seeing it sold in gas stations now too. Little shot bottles of it. I'm guessing it's this that's in the pro cyclist bottles that they drink immediately after they come over the finish line. Is this something we should all be taking? What are the benefits? And that's from Philip.
No, that's not what they're drinking at the finish line. Well, most of the time it's not. That's cherry juice that they're drinking at the finish line. So they're two different
that sounds nice.
Gross juices.
Oh, cherry juice sounds nice. Cherry Coke, cherry cola.
But beetroot juice has massive benefits as well. And these are really well-studied benefits at these points. So actually, we'll talk a little bit about beetroot juice first, and then we'll talk about cherry juice, because I think there's a lot of curiosity as to why Remco's drinking cherry juice straight after Tour de France stages, straight after the Worlds.
It's clearly a juice concoction that's put into a Coke bottle or a bottle of water or something. This is not something that they're buying off the shelf or that, someone's manufacturing.
It's juice out of a carton, or they're making it themselves or whatever.
It's like when, back in the 80s, you used to put the tea in the Coke bottle and milky tea in the Coke bottle going to the bog. That's a very Irish thing.
So beetroot juice is high in dietary nitrates, which the body converts into nitrous oxide. And nitrous oxide helps to dilate blood vessels, and that improves blood flow and oxygen delivery around the bodies. So this is why we're starting to see it pop up in health food stores and in bike shops, because of these documented benefits. There's been study after study to show how it improves the efficiency of mitochondria, and they're like the powerhouses of the cells. They allow athletes to use oxygen more efficiently. There's also one good study I came across where it improves time trial performance quite significantly as well. And several studies suggest that nitrates in beetroot juice can improve stamina by reducing the oxygen cost of exercise. It means you can improve at higher intensity periods for longer. So to get the benefits of this, you need to load on it. It's not just one glass of beetroot juice. So you need to start taking beetroot juice 7 days before your event, consuming 500 ml of beetroot juice per day for this period, so you can saturate the body with nitrates. And on the day of the event, you need to take an additional dose 2 to 3 hours before the start line. And that's your protocol if you want to get those benefits.
There's a proper protocol for it, yeah. It's not just like take one after the race. These guys are so dialed in, they know.
No, not after the race at all.
Okay.
So this is a loading phase before the race to get ready for the race.
Okay.
So that's why you're seeing these little shops now there's different brands. So I can't talk specifically to the loading or how many bottles you'd need, because they all have different concentrates, but you should be able to extrapolate that from 500 ml beetroot juice per day for the 7 days leading up to it, and then again 500 ml on the day of the event.
Have you ever used this?
Yes, loads of times.
Okay.
I don't know if they work, but the placebo is a documented improver of performance as well. So now that I've told everyone they work, you'll get a placebo benefit and maybe an actual benefit. Who knows? But that's different to cherry juice. So cherry juice is what we're seeing after the stage, like you said. And I actually had to figure out what this was, because I've never used cherry juice, and I don't know why it's popped up in the World Tour and become so important, but it's really interesting. So it's something called Tart cherry juice. Have you heard of this?
No, never.
It must be a richer form of cherry juice. So it's rich in anti-inflammatory properties. So they have a potent anti-inflammatory effect, helping reduce muscle soreness and inflammation if taken immediately following exercise. They're also high in antioxidants to combat oxidative stress after prolonged physical activity like cycling. So that can aid in faster recovery by reducing muscle damage. Muscle soreness is also another documented benefit from them. Studies have shown that Tart cherry juice can decrease muscle damage to improve muscle recovery time. Also improves sleep by bringing in melatonin, which I'd imagine is very good for bringing cortisol levels down immediately post-race. And obviously then it's hydrating as well. So it seems like it's worth trying. I'm going to give it a belt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just from the small bit of research that I did as well, it seems to affect your parasympathetic nervous system. And as you said, bring cortisol levels down, relax you, and then you get all the knock-on amazing benefits from there. But
I'd actually be interested to see if anyone has tried beetroot juice or cherry juice. Let us know in the comments how you found them. I've tried beetroot juice myself, and it does turn your fecal matter quite a strange colour.
You're like, oh, I need to go to the doctor straight away. I'm bleeding here.
It feels like you're bleeding inside, like you've eaten razor blades instead of cornflakes.
Oh, that's interesting. So don't be alarmed, everybody, if that happens.
You get your male period.
Oh, Lord. Okay, let's move on from that anyway. So next question. I've been pushing myself hard in training to improve my cycling performance, but I'm worried about overtraining. What are the early signs and symptoms of overtraining that I should be aware of, both physically and mentally? How can I balance pushing my limits with adequate recovery to avoid overtraining? Do you have any specific strategies for monitoring training load, ensuring proper nutrition, and adding rest and recovery days into my schedule? Additionally, how can I adjust my training intensity and volume if I suspect I'm approaching an overtrained state? And that's from Jose. Jose's taking the piss. He's got about 20 questions in there.
Look, I don't want to sound condescending, but the answer to that is that's a coach's job. That's how you figure it out. This is not like I can give you a couple of pointers and stuff to look out for here, but that's where a coach earns his money. Like any fool can throw up training sessions on Training Peaks. Where a coach earns his money is knowing where that edge is between pushing an athlete and overtraining, and when he slightly steps, because you're always just slightly stepping across the line when you're trying to maximize performance. But the thing to realize is, especially if you're self-coached, like it sounds like Jose is, and you don't understand where that line is, you will be better off taking 10 steps back from the line, because you're better off being 1%, sorry, you're in a much worse position if you're 1% overtrained than if you're 20% undertrained. So 1% overtrained, it's game over. 20% undertrained, you're still pretty fine. Like, you can pull a performance out. Not going to be your best performance, but it's going to be a lot better than the 1% overtrained performance.
It's a real science, isn't it? Like, it's very complicated. The human body is an extremely complicated machine. So to get all of this right, it's tough. It's tough to figure out on your own.
There's some data that can really help, and then there's some markers that can really help. I think if you have persistent fatigue, if you're writing into a cycling podcast, you're probably overtrained as the first sign. But I think outside that, if you have persistent fatigue, like you feel tired in the morning when you wake up, you need more naps than usual, that's definitely a sign. Decreased performance on those key power metrics. John Wakefield, when I had him on the podcast, go back and search that on the YouTube channel. He advocated a sub-maximum fatigue test, and he runs through the protocol on that, which can tell you if you're coming up on fatigue or if you're not going to get an adaptation from your training. Muscle soreness, elevated morning resting heart rate. And like, this is where I lean heavily on Whoop, because I look at morning heart rate to see if I have any deviations from my baseline. I look for heart rate variability to see if I have deviations from my baseline. And then I'm pairing that data measurements, because on their own, they're helpful, but they doesn't give you the whole picture when you start to pair them with those subjective measurements like fatigue, decreased performance. Are you starting to pick up illness more frequent? Do you have weight loss fluctuations, loss of appetite, sleeping poorly, like feeling like it's taking you longer to get to sleep or disrupted sleep during the night? I think all that is signs that you're
overtrained.
Pretty close. I always think saddle sores is one as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. For me, it's a real dip off in my motivation to train. So there'll start appearing a lot of gaps in my training peaks, and that's a big sign where if I'm moving sessions around a lot, saying, oh, I'm not going to train today, I'm going to actually do that session tomorrow, or I'll move that to my rest day on Friday. For me, it's the motivation, like psychologically, it kind of gets into me. And then also your mood. I think if you're overtrained, you're going to be cranky because everything's going to be irritating you. You're going to be a little bit short with the people that you love. Things that probably wouldn't have stressed you out before.
It's kind of the same if you're overworked.
Yeah, it's a stressor. It's just another type of stressor. So all of those indications. So
I think to answer, I know he's a multi-pronged question. I think some of them I can point them, like the John Wakefield one, point you back to listening to that podcast because it's 90 minutes of gold. Another one to look at in your data, which John Wakefield doesn't talk about, is CTL. That's chronic training load. That's a running total of what our fitness is like over the past 40 days. So CTL, I would look at a maximum ramp rate of 5 to 8 points. So week 1 to week 2, you don't want to be increasing more than 5 to 8 points. If you are ramping more than that for more than 2 weeks at a time, like if you do it 2 weeks in a row, we'd call that like a super compensation block. If you're north of 8 CTL, if you're constantly pushing that, that's also a sign. And his last part on that was on fueling for that and how you adjust fueling. I'll just point you back to that Yuri Carlson podcast, which I thought was brilliant. It's nearly our reference podcast at this point for pointing people to when they want to know about fueling and how to cycle carbohydrates, because it's really important to fuel the body, because the body can't produce adaptations in a surplus. So you need to be fueling the body adequately. Even if you're trying to cook calories on a macro view, micro day to day, you need to be giving it the fuel it needs to fuel those sessions, and then you cut back on the rest days.
You meant to say you can't get adaptations in a deficit.
In a deficit,
in a deficit. Sorry, you said surplus. No, just not to confuse people. I think that's really important. Look, I think this guy, Jose, seems to be very dialed in. He had a lot of really good questions there. So he's obviously, this is something that's concerning him. For me, and Anthony drills this into me every single week, is basically journal your training, because so I don't write it down in a journal. I don't have a dear diary, but in my training peaks, I write notes about how I felt, how the session went, loads of like minute details. And you can look back on all of that, and same with your food, and say, okay, this is probably where I didn't really quite knock it on the head this week.
What I tried to get you to do, and you've been actually getting much better at it, is to be proud of your training peaks. When you log into your training peaks, you want to see all the greens, but you want to see the feedback. Is your Whoop connected into your training peaks? So you're getting that complete picture. So you can say, here's the training I've done, here's how well recovered I am, and now here's a mini little diary entry with my subjective feedback. So then if you do start working with a coach, or you have a period where you're going back to analyze yourself, you're not looking at stuff in a vacuum going, oh, an amazing day there, why was that? Or the terrible day there, why was that? We have data to inform that picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Jose, thank you for writing in. Okay, next question. Anthony and Sarah, this is a bit of a wild question, I guess, but how do you speak to yourself when you're really struggling on a climb or really suffering in a race? I've noticed that my young lad, who's 16 and a promising rider, really quickly descends into negative self-talk when the going gets tough. Any tips to help him? I really believe that your words to yourself are important.
We are so excited to announce that we are partnering with Whoop. Whoop are changing the game when it comes to wearable technology and health monitoring. Whoop is a wearable health and fitness coach that provides you with feedback and actionable insights into your sleep, your recovery, your training, your stress, and your overall health. Sarah and I have been using Whoop for years, and we love the insights it provides into our body's inner workings. It really gives us a look under the hood. And you're going to see Mathieu van der Poel, Richard Carapaz, and other elite level cyclists wearing Whoop, but it isn't just for those superstars. All the data is personalized to your unique physiology and fitness levels. If you're interested in taking control of your health and your fitness so that you can excel in all aspects of your life, you have to go and check out Whoop. Go to the URL now, which is join.whoop.com/Roadman. I'm going to pop that in the description below, and you're going to get a free month's access to Whoop membership on me. I promise you won't regret it.
For me, preparation has always been the antidote to that. If negative self-talk creeps in for me, it's always because I've cut corners my preparation. And I'm like, oh, I'm suffering on this climb and no one else is suffering because I cut corners and they didn't cut corners. But if you go to a race and you show up and you know you've been on point with all the training, recovery, diet, there's great preparation in that. But failing that, I think, start off just recognizing that he is talking negatively about
a lot
himself.
of people don't even realize that they're doing it. It's it's kind of second nature, this negative inner monologue, and this self-talk. You get into a negative circle, but you don't actually realize that you do. So I think that's definitely a really important thing to do.
Like you talked in the last one about your training peaks and adding stuff into it. I would diary that in your training peaks, or if you don't want your coach seeing it, put it in a separate diary. But I would catalog that. What are you saying? When are you saying it? And then I would teach him to start turning, negative talk into slightly more positive or neutral talk. Like instead of, I can't keep this pace. They're riding away from me. That's like a total uncontrollable. To go with the stoic, control your controllables. Say, okay, let me focus on my breath. Let me focus on, the rhythm of the pedal stroke. Focus on something you can control. So focusing on the process rather than the outcome. Like he mentioned a climb. If it's going up a climb, you can only ride A to B as fast as you can up a climb. So focusing on, I'm getting dropped, I'm riding away from people, it's not always that helpful. Where if you focus on the breath, the rhythm, your watts if you're using a power meter, that's a lot more helpful for me. Mantras is not something I've ever used, but I've worked with sports psychologists in the past who are huge on mantras, like repeating stuff like, I can keep the pace, I can keep the pace. And another useful tip that I got from a sports psychologist, and he'd worked with a lot of Grand Tour riders, was he pushed his thumb and his forefinger together. But he'd done this at various points throughout the year. So the rider in question, he'd be at an altitude camp where he's away from his wife and kids for 4 weeks. And multiple times during the altitude camp, he pushed his thumb and finger together. Remember, okay, the sacrifice I'm making here. When everyone's out for a nice dinner and he has to eat a very calorie controlled meal, he's pushing his thumb and forefinger together. And then in the race, when it comes that key moment to deliver his team leader to the bottom of the Tourmalet, and the legs are hurting and everyone's like, doesn't want to be doing it because they're in the third week of a Grand Tour, it's 38 degrees. He pushes his thumb and his forefinger together, and it brings back to him all the memories of all the sacrifices he made, and they were all just for this one moment.
Wow.
And I thought that's pretty cool.
That's
I've never
really
actually
powerful.
used it, but it's really cool.
That's really powerful. Yeah, I think for this guy, he's 16. I think you want to start building self-confidence. So this kind of setting goals, achievable goals, and hitting markers along the way to a bigger goal can give you that self-confidence as well. So you're kind of like, okay, well, I did X last week, which was tough and almost killed me. I got through that. I can get through this. So writing down like 3 smaller goals and on the way to a big goal, I think is really good, because that will also give you that boost every time you think, I'm going to fail, I can't do this. You think, well, did you know what? I did this really, really tough thing yesterday. I can do this really tough thing today. Yeah.
But peer comparison is really dangerous at that age. Like I remember playing football at that age, and we all get, especially lads, we get testosterone at vastly different stages in our development. And the difference it makes getting that testosterone bang, like you're playing football at 15, 16, some lads have a beard and a mustache, and other lads are like 12-year-olds. They're total children. They've no muscle definition. And then they catch up. So it's not just like, we're all going to get it at some point, but maybe in 1 year's time, he's going to be the best rider in the entire category or the entire national federation. But at the moment, he just hasn't had that growth spirit that some of his peers have had. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think just kind of keep him at this. It's obviously a sport that he's found that he loves. So try and keep him at it. Do your best to keep him training. One more thing before we move on from this question is a couple of really good books if he's a reader. And if he's not a reader, definitely maybe download Audible so he can listen to it when he's on the bike. Relentless is a great book, From Good to Great to Unstoppable by Tim Grover.
I never read that.
Yeah, it's a bestseller. He's a renowned performance coach for athletes like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. So
we need to get him on the podcast.
We do. And then there's another one, Think Like a Warrior, the 5 inner beliefs that make you unstoppable. And it's just basically using this warrior archetype to kind of give tips and tricks to when you're in those dark moments to turn around your conversations that you're having with yourself.
I like to have you use these.
Yes, of course I do.
I would throw in Steve Peters' Chimp Paradox into that as well.
Oh yeah, that is brilliant. That really makes you kind of understand why these random negative thoughts pop in and how you can deal with them.
Yeah, I had Sean Conway on the podcast recently. I don't think it's been released yet. It's coming out next week.
It's coming out soon.
And Sean has the world record for most number of Ironman. So he went 105 Ironman races in 105 consecutive days. But he talked about these different personas he has, and he realized that he has a chimp persona and he has, I think it was like a hare persona or something. So one needs to chase things and one needs to fidget. Wow. But he realized he can't conform to normal societal stereotypes of having a job, having, a pretty consistent 9-to-5 daily routine, because these two alter egos he have just pull him in different directions. So he has the chimp that's fidgeting. He wants to always fix cars and be building shelves and playing with his hands. But every now and then, the chimp needs to take a back seat for the hare to chase something, and he needs to do these wild adventures to silence the hare, because if he doesn't silence the hare, he can't do anything. His life is just gets taken over by this need to go.
It's amazing, isn't it? I love people who have taken the time. Now, if you're a long distance runner, an ultra distant runner, or an Ironman, or any endurance athlete, you do have that time, a little bit of time for self-reflection and trying to figure out, you know, I'm a tiger.
Less than you think, though. Everyone always, I think people overplay that, how much head time you have to think on the bike. I don't really think of anything when I'm on the bike.
Really? Yeah. Like your mind doesn't go in. Oh, I do. I'm very much.
I'm focused on the effort.
Yeah. No,
maybe you're riding too easy.
I get very contemplative on the bike. But yeah, I love that. Like, actually, and that's probably a good tip for this young guy as well. Like, it's starting to understand how your brain works. And yeah, that Chimp Paradox book is a brilliant
He's
way.
only 16, like.
Yeah.
I think I was playing computer games.
You were a dumbass when you were 16. I didn't know you, but I'm guessing. I'd say you were.
You can't say that.
Okay, next question. I need new bike shoes. What are you wearing?
What am I wearing, or what do I wish I was wearing? I think they're different questions. I've historically wore Physique for a long time, and I love Physique. Physique R1s were my favourite road shoe. I might go back to them next season. I'm wearing a set of Specialized S-Works at the moment, which I don't love. My gravel shoes I do really like. They're Quok.
Yeah, I have a set of them as well.
I had Quok on the podcast, and his story is insane. Like can you remember this? So his parents exiled from Vietnam on a raft that they built and escaped the war in Vietnam, and he came to the UK through various migration channels, and he started this shoe company. And even one of his first, he'd sold the idea of these shoes into Rafa, the bike shop. So they said they'd buy 10 sets or something, and so he saved up his life savings and he went back to Vietnam to the shoemaker, and he's like, okay, I finally got a client, I need 10 sets. And your man's like, what? The minimum order is like 40,000 sets. How do you mean you need 10? So he had to absolutely beg. God knows what he had to do to get this 10 sets made out there. But he got those 10 sets made, sold them into Rafa, and that was the beginning of Quok. And now Geraint Thomas is wearing them in the Giro d'Italia this year. There's a cool bit of history in them. Are they better than the other bike shoe? I haven't a clue. Like, they feel comfortable. They don't give me hot foot. Definitely better than my S-Works.
Yeah, they do size small, I find, though. When we got ours, we both had to upsize.
Yeah, I'm on a 45,
so if you're going to get them, I find them really comfortable. Didn't have to break them in whatsoever, and I think they look really cool.
But there's a few I'm looking at the moment. I love Poggies, DMTs. They just look like a glove, but I don't know how they'll go in Irish weather. Like one of the lads in the Roadman group has them, but he's rock and roll. He lives down in Nice for half the year.
They just look so cool on him. He has the permatan as well. The knit ones have gotten really popular. Trek released those.
They're hard to keep though.
Yeah, they're really cool. They almost look like a soccer bootie. They're kind of like they have them in black and white and black and gold, and then there's a white version as well. And I just happened to be in Ronan McLaughlin's company. He's the kind of tech writer for the Escape Collective. While he had 2 pairs of these, and he was trying them out. No, of the Trek knit. Yeah, they're the Trek RSL knit road cycling shoe.
Don't like
$499.
I'm not a Trek fan.
But he really liked them. He really liked them. He said they were super comfortable.
Greg LeMond didn't like Trek. That's good enough for me.
Anyway, he liked them as far as I know. I'm sure he has a full report on them, but they're also a good option.
Just to leave this question behind now, but Nimble is a brand that I really am interested in, and maybe I might try them in the off season this year. They're the ones all the Visma Lisa bike lads are on. I had them in a bike shop in Girona in my hand, and they're unbelievable. They're really like pieces of art, but they're super expensive.
Oh, we have to give a shout out for the Decathlon shoe, because we had a look at them in Decathlon.
Yeah, I've never worn them though. I wouldn't recommend them to someone until I've worn them.
Yeah, well, that's very true, but they are an affordable shoe. I am currently wearing Bont cycling shoes. They're more of a track shoe though. They're very
I might be taking
stiff.
back off you.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I might need them for time trials.
They're very, very stiff. So if you see me out rocking the Bonts, they're not really an everyday road shoe, but I quite like them. Okay, we'll move on to the next question.
We got one more?
Yeah, we've got one more. Okay, so Anthony, how can I improve my pedaling technique? How do I make my pedal stroke the most efficient I can?
Interesting. So I would think about there's different phases to the pedal stroke. First, so anyone listening on audio and not the podcast or not YouTube video, I suppose I'll try and explain it by a clock. So if you have 12 o'clock is the top of your pedal stroke, 6 o'clock is the bottom of your pedal stroke. So you're going to naturally have dead points when you're at the top and your bottom of your pedal stroke. Most of us just engage the pedal stroke from like 1 o'clock down until like 5 o'clock. So it's the push phase down. And then we start pushing on the other leg. So it's a constantly push, 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 push. A smooth pedal stroke, or when you see somebody, you just go, they pedal really nicely. It's because they pedal in circles. So it's not going push with left leg, push with right leg. Their two legs work independently of each other. So their left leg goes down, push, comes around the 6 o'clock dead spot and then starts a pull sequence up.
It's like a sweeping.
So it's a full circle.
Yeah.
So a way you can learn how to pedal full circles and you're not pushing around with both feet is actually just to pedal with one leg. So easier to do. If you have skills, you'll be able to do it outside, but easier to practice on the indoor trainer and making sure you're not having this clunk at the bottom of the pedal stroke. You'll hear this audible as the free hub engages because you're not pedaling in a smooth circle. So the way to think about the bottom part of it is when you're at the 5 o'clock around to 7 o'clock, as if you had shit on the sole of your shoe and you're trying to scrape it off the edge of a curb or a sidewalk and you're scraping it round on the way up. So pedaling, like you could do 5 minutes at the end of each session on your left leg, 5 minutes on your right leg, and that will start to smooth it out. But those single leg drills are really important for it.
One tip you gave me when I started cycling is that you've got a piece of dog poo on the bottom of your shoe and you're trying to scrape it off. And that, honestly, if you think about that, that makes a lot of sense when you're doing your pedal stroke.
So the two legs are independent of each other nearly. Yeah. And then I would say once you've got that, and I would spend some time doing that, I would move over to high cadence drills. So you're starting to do some drills. Maybe it's starting out at a 5 minute effort and throwing a couple of 5 minute efforts into a session where you're 100 plus RPMs. I remember one of my first track coaches on the national team had me doing 20-minute intervals at like 125 RPM. And
that's my worst nightmare.
Oh my God, they're so hard to start because the power is not that high and your heart rate's not that high, but you just, at the start, you're all over the place with them. But if you look at the track riders, because the fixed gear, I don't think riding a fixed gear helps your pedal stroke, but if you have a good pedal stroke, there's like good maintenance to riding a fixed gear, I think, but it forces your legs into that circle all the way around the fixed gear. So that's a nice thing to add in as well if you have a nice pedal stroke. But I think that this sort of sequence for me is important. You create the nice pedal stroke with single leg drill, work on it with the high cadence before moving to anything that's fixed gear.
So on the Wattbike, which we have here, it does give you that peanut. So on the display of the Wattbike, it shows you how your pedal stroke is doing and if it's balanced.
It's like the application of power all the way around.
It's the application of power the whole way around. And I have to say mine's absolutely chronic. It's something that you're not going to change over a course of a month or two. This is something that you consistently have to work on. And I will say, when you see somebody with like a lovely pedal stroke, you can notice somebody who has this lovely sweeping motion and a full circle. Some people just look amazing. Yeah, they do. You look pretty good on the bike, I have to say. Another one who I always talk about is Sean McKenna. He just looks like he's made for the bike. He's a local Irish rider.
For me, it's Jan Ulrich.
For me, it's Sean McKenna.
Roadman, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rider Support. There's another video up here which you're absolutely going to love, and please make sure you subscribe to the channel because we have loads of amazing upcoming content which I don't want you to miss. See you next day.